well, this is too much. I'm overwhelmed. Go on, go on.
Okay, so first and foremost, I want to say thank you to all of you guys for being interested in participating in this Zoom call. I also want to extend my sincere thanks to Ms. Jimerson for allowing us to, allow her grace to be a part of this Zoom. I know I'm not speaking for just myself when I say that through junior high school and high school, you have really found a way to share your gems with us from your own experience outside of the textbook. And I think that in these times, a lot of people are starting to recognize it a little more. So I want to say thank you. And anybody else who wants to say thank you, I want to allow you to take this time out to say thank you as well.
Yes, ma'am. We appreciate you.
Ms. Emerson.
Yes.
Yeah. I, for one,
Okey-dokey.
am sorry, but I, for one, am really interested in this talk because I just remember Ms. Jemison being like, so there's the history and then there's like the real history. And I'm just really ready for the tea and for the knowledge that you're about to drop.
I don't know. Yeah, there's the history and there's real history. Yes. You all seen this in play now, aren't you? Yes, okay.
So I asked everybody to come in to the chat with at least 1 to 3 thought-provoking conversation starters or questions that you may have for Ms. Jimerson or just in regards to, what's going on in the world today. So whoever wants to go first, you can go right on ahead.
I hear someone, I don't know who it is. Is that background or is that someone asking me a question?
I think that's background. That might be me. Sorry.
Okay.
All right. So, Ms. Jemison, what do you make of all of this going on right now?
Well, what do I make of it? It's always been going on. Mm-hmm. Remember when people say the civil rights movement, and I always try to impart to you all that the civil rights movement was always going on. And the 60s was the modern civil rights movement. Civil rights was going on with Frederick Douglass. It was going on with Sojourner Truth. And then we get the modern civil rights movement in the 20th century. And also to say to you again, the work is not done as we see, because the more things seems to change, the more they remain the same. Why? Yes, some gains were made, but were those gains honored? It's too fragmented. And what's going on now in the world is, as they say, the straw that broke the camel's back. It has always been going on, and then it's like a rush to judgment. Well, let's put another Band-Aid on it. Let's put another Band-Aid on it. But you see, I think the difference this time is that not only Black and brown people, but white people understand that until this stain, because it is a stain, until this stain is cleaned up on America, America may be the most powerful country in the world, but that stain, it's like driving a car with the emergency brakes on it. You go forward and then you stop. You ease on and then you stop. We can't go out in the world and say we are the #1 country in the world. We have influence. Look at what we're doing and let us have influence to help you so that we can influence the world to have a democracy. But the stain of treating Black and brown people as not equal, this stain, this country, this great #1 country that was built on the backs of our ancestors. How can you tell us about human rights, economic rights, cultures, without cleaning up your own stain? You know, my mom used to tell us something when we started gossiping, of course, the girls. She would always say, sweep the dirt from in front of your door. And that meant you don't gossip about people because we all have stuff ourselves that we need to clean up. And what do I think about what's going on now? I'm optimistic. As I used to say to you when you was in the 7th grade and the 8th grade, and then you went on to high school, it is you, the young people, those in between, the young people who make a difference. Now there's everybody out there. There are the older people, and then there's the very young, and then there's you. The modern civil rights movement start to take a turn, and when I say a turn, a global spotlight. When children started to march, and this supremacy government that we live under could not even have compassion for children because their skin happened to be Black, sick the dogs and turn the hoses on the children. And that's when the world cried out and said, America, what are you doing? Not only to the Negro children, people, because we were Negroes then, is this the way you treat children? You know, you have to look at nations. Look at the way they treat their very old and look at the way they treat the very young. And that will tell you what type of nation it is. I'm optimistic. I'm optimistic because I see these young people. I see a variety of people. But then I see so many people whose complexion is not ours. So that tells me that they recognize that until we clean up the stain of having 2 Americas, we'll never truly have a United States of America. And it's not just here. Look at what's happened. It is worldwide. It is in London. It is in Germany. And guess where else? Yemen, the poorest country in the world. I'm optimistic, but you have to have what it is that needs to be done. What is it that we want? And every time I hear someone say, this needs to be a further conversation. We don't need to have any more conversations about Black and white. We need to have conversations that says, these are the policies that we have. This is what we need to do. This is what we are doing. And anytime that policy or this is not done, here are the consequences. I'm optimistic because I think there are people who are really serious about finding real solutions. It is so, you know, and it's for from young people. I've learned so much from our young African American males. We always knew that they're a target. But when I watched that video, 8 minutes and how many seconds? Here is a man who put his foot on George Floyd's neck and knew that he was being recorded. And the arrogance of white supremacy and privilege, he had his hand on his hip and didn't move because it is ingrained in him that he could act like this, and whatever consequences came, it would still be all right. How could you not be outraged? But what do you do with it? And it got so that I couldn't even look at the video. Every time it came on, I turned my head. I didn't cry until this morning. I watched a funeral yesterday that was in Minnesota. And I listened to Reverend Al Sharpton. And he said the words. That cop had his knee on George Floyd's neck. And Al Sharpton, Reverend Sharpton said, we built this country. We could have been anything. And I don't mean one here and one here and one here, but you kept your knee on our necks. He talked about, even with money, those people who crossed over money rich, people like Oprah, people like Michael Jordan, people like Kobe Bryant, but always looking for something. Why? To keep your knee on our necks, your foot on our backs. And I don't know if you all remember how I used to tell you that about hate. I don't know if you recall this about hate and trying to keep each other down, playing the dozens on each other when I was saying hate on each other. As long as you hold someone else down, how can you move forward? Because if you move, the person you're holding down can move. And that's America. In all of our greatness, how can we continue to be great as long as you have your foot on our backs and knees on our necks, on people of color, Black and brown, gender bias? This is not only about police brutality, but that must be the immediate thing to stop now. Look at what happened. Look at what's happening in this pandemic. Who are the people who are dying the most proportionately? Why did that happen? Lack of resources, health care, economics. Who are the people in the front line? Essential workers. Who are they? Black and brown people in the service industry. Because as much as we have moved forward, women's rights, diversity, there's that glass ceiling. And I'm just going to be very plain with you. When those protesters was at the White House the other night, and they sent out the federal troops, and what kind of pellets were they shooting them with?
Rubber bullets.
Tear gas. And people can say this is radical. You know what that's about? The whole mindset and belief of white supremacy. Let's do this to keep them in their place. Show them their place. And even if they have a complaint, they must keep quiet because this is our country and you're here to serve us. Okay, well, look at this. Someone just flashed in front of me. How are you, young man? Asamana. What does that mean? Well, the president got up and made his speech, and he said, I am the law and order president. Here's law and order, and this is about the man. This is not about the presidency. You understand that, right? He said, I am the law and order president. And of course, what was his first reaction to what was happening? Thugs. We are thugs. Of course we are thugs. We are thieves. And what did I always share with you when I go into a store? I'm no different. They follow me. Little black woman with gray hair. They follow me because I'm a thief. I'm going to steal. He marched over to this church now that had been damaged from the night before, and it was boarded up. People were there. And by the way, they have many people of color, clergy there. He marches over with the federal troops after they have now said to these people, back up and stay in your place. If you don't, we are going to beat you. He marches over to the church, looking very out of place, turned around, and just stood there. Why did you go there? And then his daughter hands him a Bible out of her $1,400 bag, I understand, and I'm not against that, but and he holds it up. Well, it would have been nice if he had opened it up and said something. And then he points to it. And I bring that up to say that the things that were in place to be ready to confront a pandemic, he dismantled, his administration dismantled it when they came in. That's why we were without resources. They deny it, but it's true. Then he's standing there by himself. Maybe he did thought. Maybe he thought. Maybe he did, maybe he can think. He says to his advisors, come. And who did you see? 6 or 7 white men. They're standing looking very awkward. And then he said, you too. And there's the little, cute, pretty little young woman, long blonde hair. You stand. What did that symbolize?
Babies.
See, excuse me?
Baby statement. So I guess Nate was like, damn, bro, why you did that, bro?
I can't hear you very clearly. Who's that talking?
I think that was a background sound, not an answer to your question.
Okay. What did that symbolize? Well, powerful white men and the pretty little woman with the long blonde hair. I'm holding up this Bible. Who am I holding up this Bible for? The ultra-conservative Bible Belt white Americans. Okay, why did we call these 6 or 7 white men in? Well, this is who we are. White men of power. White men with property. And what else? Call in the pretty little blonde, and this is not a personal attack, it's symbol. Look at this pretty little white woman with the blonde hair. This is America. You make sure I'm reelected. I'm the law and order president. I will keep those black and brown people in check and anybody who becomes aligned with them, and we will preserve white supremacy. That's what I think about what's happening. But I tell you what, this time is different because whatever he does, not he, but the administration, whatever they do, this time it will not go away. Any questions or comments you would like to say?
I have a question, Ms. Emerson. How are you?
Yes. Hi, Shauna.
Hi. Quick question. So, they released a letter from the UN condemning the United States both for the response for COVID and how it disproportionately affects Black and Brown people, and also about modern day lynchings. And they listed George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and Ahmaud Arbery in the letter. Do you think that will have any impact on current policies that they're trying to push right now in the United States, or do you think that's more of a political sentiment to just say, yeah, we condemn it?
Well, the UN was formed to be a peacekeeping organization, what the League of Nations didn't do. Remember, we never joined the League of Nations. They condemned it. The United Nations represents the world. And because this has become a world issue, I believe that the United Nations didn't have a choice but to say, we condemn this, and America, you need to get your act together because we play a major role in the UN and the world. And yes, I do think it lends credibility to what it is that this direction that the movement is going in. And it's up to you young people here, your generation, to make sure that this time the movement doesn't get hijacked and pushed aside. What are some of the things you hear? You hear Black Lives Matter. Are they only talking about Black people? We hear I can't breathe. We hear hands up, don't shoot. We hear no justice, no peace. This has been going on. Well, in the modern civil rights movement, what were they saying? Freedom now. We shall overcome. Human rights is a right from God. Aren't they really saying the same thing? And the point is, me, I'm tired, but I'm not defeated. Many people from my generation, we're tired, but we're not defeated. Enough of the conversations, enough of the veiled conversations about we're actually doing something. Conversations with solutions. You can't change people's minds and hearts, but you can change people's perspective to say, you know, I never thought about that. Because many people are racist and don't even realize they're racist. What we need to do as people of color is to be very clear and very aware of the racist system that we live under and not perpetuated by playing the race game on each other. Clear about that? Anyone else?
I have a question.
I don't want you to be shy. I don't want you to be shy. I'm an old lady. I have nothing to lose.
Okay, so my question is more so about mental health. So personally, I personally lost my grandfather maybe 2 weeks before COVID, and then COVID hit, and then we're quarantined, and then all of the recent not was recent, but obviously constant emotional trauma. I feel like Black people constantly, like, to be Black is literally to be in a constant state of grief. You know what I mean? Like, to know people's names and not know the grip of their hand or how they shake their hand or what their favorite meal is. So my question to you is, based on your experience, and since you've obviously, lived longer than all of us and been through more, did you have a mental health, like, self-care routine, things that you've had to do to kind of keep yourself in a good space? Because I feel like with everything that's going on, I find myself becoming negative more often, like, just constantly upset, or not saying that I can't find the happiness in life, but sometimes it's a little bit harder when you're going outside. You might get shot. Like, your mind just goes a million and one places. So
I understand.
and then being quarantine. So if you have any tips on, like, self-care, because I personally I was actually planning on starting a website for, like, just Black people across the globe, just an open forum. Like, not everyone has access to other Black people, okay? Like, I literally just moved, but the place I was living before, I was the only Black person with 4 other white women in the house, so
Right.
not being able to speak or converse or basically just get normal feelings out. So I want that, like, my website to be a platform where people can communicate with others. It doesn't matter if you have anyone. You can come on this website and you'll be able to speak to somebody, and they'll know what you're going through because they're going through it, and resources and that kind of stuff. So if you can give any tips on how to keep your mental health good during times like this, I can appreciate it.
Absolutely. And I'm still learning.
I'm sure.
I'm still learning. You have to think and have a routine for self-wellness. Okay? Now, there was a time I used to read more. I've always read everything. But you must carve out time for yourself. And that could be simply having a favorite place in your house. Like me, it's my kitchen. I have a little deck out there that sits about 2 people.
Mhm.
I can sit here and look out, and there's a tree, and I can actually sit here for hours. Not speak, not answer the phone, just think and just meditate. Sometimes self-wellness is just to do nothing. When I say do nothing, clear your mind of the noise. The noise. It may be just taking out a book, or it may be just reading a scripture from the Bible. For me, I read one of the Psalms every day. I've read them over and over. And each time I read a Psalm, I get a deeper understanding of what it's saying, because the Bible can be very contradictory. But when I do this, every time I read a Psalm over and over, I can connect it to something in my life, and that calms me. Now, some people, I don't know, well, make sure you can treat yourself. I don't want you to overeat, but if you like ice cream, maybe have ice cream and just sit and think. Or if you know someone that you have a strong relationship with, it could be just talking to that person and you feel better after. There are no great things that I do. My thing is just to absolutely sit and do nothing and just think and to be grateful and thankful. And Brianna, for me, always, you can have your little pity party. Bring yourself back very quickly and say, I have this, I have my health, I'm in my right mind, healthy, family, I can breathe, I can speak. Look at all the things I can be thankful for. Those other things will come. Stop focusing on lack, L-A-C-K. God did not want us to have lack, L-A-C-K. Focus on a bountiful life. Thankfulness and gratitude.
So
I didn't know you started a website.
Yes, I that is my goal. I mean, I haven't been like physically on the front line of protests, but I feel very inclined. I previously wanted to do something like this, just not per se for like the whole masses of Black people. It was more focused on like young Black women. But I feel like this is not a time to really just pick one group and say, all right, I'm gonna focus on like we all are in this together, male, female,
That's right.
light brown, sugar brown,
That's right.
balsamic, whatever. Like we're all in it.
Everybody is not on the line. You do what you can do
yeah.
to help the cause.
Right.
Yes.
I was going to say very briefly, when I sent you guys out the message letting me know if you do have a business that you already have or you're actively working on, please send that to me, because I feel like we're already a community within ourselves, being as though we've all come from Medgar in some way, form, or fashion. But I feel like if we start that, support and that community from within and build forward, it's so much easier to get things done. To piggyback off what Ms. Jimerson said, it is very important to focus on what you have, because I feel like a lot of times you lose focus of what you have and appreciation of what you have now when you're constantly looking for something greater, when you're constantly on the move to kind of, bring yourself to higher ranks. You lose the importance and the significance of what you're going through in that moment.
Oh,
So,
yeah. When
so,
did you get so wise?
So I saw Rochelle had a question in the chat. She said, what is your idea on pro-Blackness and readopting the ideas of the Black Panther Party or even the ideas of Marcus Garvey?
Oh, Marcus. Marcus, well, all these people were before their time, and you see when people realize that you have a mind and you can think. Marcus was a threat because he could think. Why? Because he had a plan. He had a plan to say, Black people uplift ourselves, because that's true. With all that's going around, no one is going to do it for us but us. So what did they do? They found a way to deport him. Pro-Blackness. How could you not be pro-Black? How could you not be pro-Black when that's where humanity came from? The Black Panthers, and we just had that in my U.S. history class this week. When those, what do you call them? With those people who went to the Michigan Capitol, where they're loaded guns saying, liberate Michigan and open up the economy. What did the leadership from the White House say? Those are good people, liberate Michigan. In the 1960s, the Black Panther used the California law that you were allowed to have guns and rifles And they said because of police brutality, which we are still fighting now, marched to the California Capitol with their guns, and they were what? Arrested, and said, there's a militant organization. And when they deem them militant, it means today, in today's language, would be terrorists. What were the 10 points the Black Panthers said? Listen to this. We want free health care. We want free health care for everyone. What else did they say? We want to have schools that really educate us. We want more money for our schools. We want more Black teachers, and we want to teach our own children. Did they say that? Now they're talking about universal health care, are they not? Police brutality. Does anybody else remember what they said? 10 points. Housing. You are not going to put us and keep us in substandard housing. And what did they say about police brutality? We can protect our own community, put Black cops in Black communities. What are they talking about? Community policing. This is in the 1960s. And what did they say when they urged parents to take their children out of those substandard public schools and started freedom schools, and college students were teaching these schools? They said, our children are going to school hungry. Let's give them breakfast when they come to school. And now the public schools in the United States provide what? A breakfast program. But they were deemed militants, which today, because they were going to overthrow the American government. And today, they would be saying what? They're terrorists. And what came out of the White House? They're thugs and they're looters. Yet the United States government, after the Black Panthers, those who were not killed and went to jail, now we come up and you know, President Johnson, under President Johnson, he did some great things in the Great Society. But I want you to look at breakfast programs. They poured money into schools. Wait a minute, and then we had the model cities, right? Service organizations, community, and where did that come from? The 10 points of the Black Panthers platform. But you have to move with the times. Today, if they said Black Panther, even though we have the new Black Panthers, I am sure that the United States will find a way to label them domestic terrorists. It's their program, meaning the program that they wanted to develop. But you know, we can't let those people have the credit. Well, didn't they do that with the first surgeries from Egypt, Africa? Didn't they do that with the math? Didn't they do that with the science? We cannot let them have credit for it. But as Reverend Al Sharpton said yesterday, no matter what you do, we're not asking for anything. As James Brown said, just open up the door and we'll get it ourselves. And as Reverend Sharpton said yesterday, in spite of you keeping your knee on our necks and your foot in our back, we went from the outhouse, the toilets out in the woods, to the White House. And that's what this is all about with Trump. When Obama was elected president, it was the ultimate outrage of white supremacy. How did this happen? And this is how we get a Trump. I hope I answered your questions partly to get you to thinking.
I have a question since we're on the topic of Trump. I was reading something. Give me one second. I have to get this in. I wrote it down.
Who is that?
It's
Let me see.
Domination,
Oh,
Miss Jameson.
this is too much.
Hi. How are you doing?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm fine. So this was like from someone. She's not pro-Trump, but she's like open-minded to Trump. So it didn't open my mind because I'm not a Trump supporter, but it made me look at things a little different. And
Okay.
everyone's sorry, but so she wrote, the Democratic Party is actually the racist party that has always tried to keep us oppressed. If Hillary was president, we would have had martial law already. The Republican Party was originally founded by African Americans. Trump is always calling them out, which is why the government doesn't like Trump. He even called out Antifa for infiltrating the riots during the peaceful protests currently going on, and he wants to get the military involved to stop them. And she said it's so much information, but most people are stuck on viewing Trump as a bad person because he's a jerk. And media also corrupts his message. You have to be ready. Well, she said you have to be ready to have an open mind to see what's really going on and to just think about it. Why would, like she said before, why would the media and government officials hate Trump so much? Which is, I think it's like, it makes sense. It makes sense to me because if if he's with the government and he's all for what they're doing, they wouldn't dislike him the way they do. So what's your take on that?
Okay. You have quite a few questions there. That's very broad. Trump is in the leadership chair, the presidency.
Mm-hmm.
The presidency. She said he's a jerk. Well, I wouldn't go so far, but he's not the smartest thing.
Yeah, no.
Trump himself is not pulling the strings. White supremacy, he's not doing that. White supremacy. Now you have to remember, Lincoln, President Lincoln, under Lincoln, we got our Reconstruction laws. 13th Amendment, abolished slavery. Okay, slavery is abolished, but then what? Because we weren't people, we were property. Okay, so you can't have this property anymore, but then what are we? Then we have our 14th Amendment. Make freed ex-slave citizens. And as citizens, everyone has equal protection under the law. Right? Well, the Republican Party, because it was a party of Lincoln, and they were the ones, the radical Republicans, who were fighting against slavery, many Black people sign up to the Republican Party, which is true, because, and when the Black man got the vote, what party did they sign up with? Republicans. Well, I would have also. Now, Reconstruction lasted 12 years. 300 years of slavery, or 200, and 12 years now, we're going to fix it. And we see again how that was hijacked. How was it hijacked? White men in power. The election of 1877, when Rutherford didn't get enough votes, the Southerners said, you now, they were tied. If you get rid of the military out of the South, because you know, they wanted another form of slavery, we'll see that you get the electoral votes that you need, you become president, and you'll appoint a Southerner to your cabinet, and you'll pull out the military and let the South take care of our people. It was called Southern Redemption, because you know those radical Republicans said, don't even seat them. So that's what we did. Again, white men in power making deals, right? Okay, a lot of Black people had signed up in the Republican Party and had gotten elected. And everybody after that, it's about power and who wants to be in power. Whether it was a Republican or a Democrat. They did not address the issues of civil and human rights for people of color. Whichever. We come on, and then in between we get the great migration. Blacks leaving the South and coming to the North because they're looking for better opportunities, not less prejudice. But then we found in the North, there's de facto segregation and prejudice. We're the first hired, last hired, first fired. What kind of jobs did we get? We fought in the Civil War. We went off and we fought in World War I. Come back, still treated as second-class citizen. Fought in a segregated army, segregated military with white officers. But then when the Depression came and Black people were really, 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 really suffering as other people, just as we now suffering in this pandemic. When Franklin Delano Roosevelt came in and started to put in place, and really at the urging of his wife, Eleanor. And some of these programs now benefited Blacks. Black people switched from the Republican Party to the Democratic Party. And because so many Black people are in the Democratic Party, many people who are Democratic presidents, they have taken our vote for granted. Now that young lady said, why do they hate Trump so much? I don't think people hate Trump. I don't want Trump to fail, because if Trump failed, America failed. But you now cannot go and make, well, I don't want to give false information. How can you be smoothie with a dictator like Putin and a dictator and killer like Kim Jong-un, that you take their word against your own people, our surveillance, that said Russia interfered in our politics. That's how he got elected. And you go off to Russia to meet with Putin, and you say that no one can be there the first half hour except you and Putin? Wouldn't you be afraid? Wouldn't she be afraid? If Trump actually did something that I consider was fair, even though I disagreed with him, I could say, well, he did this to benefit the people. What has he done to benefit any of us? Tell me, what has his administration done to benefit any of us? Can we name one thing?
No, they think throwing money at us is benefiting us.
Do we pay the same taxes?
Definitely not.
No, but do we pay taxes?
Yeah, we do, but we don't pay the same taxes.
Okay, then tell me. We pay the same taxes. Why in Scarsdale, Garden City, Long Island, further out, what is it, Sanford? Why do students get $36,000 for school, each student each year? And why do our Black and brown inner city schools are allocated only $13,000 per student?
Property taxes.
Yeah, property taxes, but are they federally funded?
No, it's solely based
Are
on
public
property.
schools federally funded? Are public schools federally funded? I don't care where they are.
You
If
know,
it's
public
public,
schools are state funded, right?
but do they get federal money if it's a public school? States run their schools, but are public schools federally funded?
I'm not sure.
Yeah,
What
I'm
does
not
it
sure.
say? What word is in school? Public. If it's public, of course. See, you guys are forgetting. We live under federalism, shared power. What do we mean? There are certain powers the federal government have, the states don't have. There are certain powers the states have, the federal governments do not have. And then there's the concurrent powers, the powers both the federal government and the states share. Now, the federal government is the only branch that can call up the military. Clear? For war. The states can't do that. However, now, each state, as long as they're within guidelines that does not go against the Constitution or whatever, each state run their own schools with federal money that's allotted to each state. Now, how the states divvy up and give it to the schools is on the state. But however, why do they get more than our inner city schools? Yes, property taxes comes from people who own property homes, and in certain areas, taxes are higher. But when money is allocated, because this is proven, why do they get so much more than people who look like you? And remember, public means what? Public, federal and state. I'm a public school teacher. I get paid through the city. Where does the city get its money from? From the state. And where does the state get their money from? Taxes, yes, and the federal government. Clear? Okay. I hope I answered some of your question. It was a very broad question.
Yeah, you did. I think someone else has a question now.
Jordan. I saw Samana. Hi, Jordan.
Hi, Miss Jemison. How you doing?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm all right. You know, I'm just living through this. I think at this point, like from the time when like I was in your class, 7th grade till now, like after seeing so many of these publicized lynchings, I don't know. I feel like in this time, like nothing has surprised me. Like none of the killings, none of the disproportionate effects of coronavirus. To be honest, it kind of just feels like business as usual. I honestly don't even think that these anything would have happened without the economic distress put on people by coronavirus. Like people have the time and very little money, and I think that without that, really nothing would have happened. And I'm not even hopeful that there will be any real change after this. I think it'll kind of be a big riot. We'll see a little bit of motion, but like, I feel like there's too much of the, I don't know what your opinion on this, but I don't know if there's going to be enough conversion from keyboard activists or on the street activists to like, like day to day people slowly chipping away at the systems that oppress us, for me to really be hopeful that anything, like I don't know if I can't from this view see my children's future being better than this, or yeah, I don't know. I don't, it could be, it could not be, but I'm actually holding out hope.
Well, you know, Jordan, you made a very important point. You say because of the pandemic, and it's true, that has a lot to do with it. People will hold up. Many people are out of work. So they wanted to get out. And I hope that we don't get a rise in the virus after this, because they are out there, many of them without masks or whatever, but people are close together. So they had the time and they want to get out. So there's pent up emotion disregard that. There's pent-up emotion. But you know what? A lot of them they're out of work. So they're hurting. And what black people are saying is that this is nothing new to us. We hurt every day. And now, has anybody ever Googled, what's her name? Jane Elliott? Ella?
Love her.
Yeah.
Love her. She's awesome.
Well, you need to Google her because she teaches about racism and she has an audience and she goes through different things about, you know, the plight of a Black person. And then she asks people, well, she just put out things. How many people would like to live like that? And nobody stands up. This is the white audience. And she said, that's what Black people go through every day, all of our lives. There is a system, Black and white. But as you are doing, all of you, and I'm so proud of you.
Thank you.
I'm proud of all of you. Why? Because you're going to do it. What did I always say? In spite of, not because of. You're going to do it in spite of and not because of. No matter how educated we are, no matter what we have materialistic, you're still a Black person, and we live under a system that something will happen in your life at some time to remind you you're not my equal in this country. And that's just being honest. So you say you don't know if anything's gonna happen. Well, something will happen. But we must be careful not to let this, I don't mean the constant demonstrations, but we must keep in the forefront of two Americas every day, relentlessly, every single day.
Hi.
Hi.
Everyone. I just wanted to drop in and just read a quote from No Name, a rapper. She
No Name, huh? That's his name?
That's her name. Her name is
No Name. Her name. Okay.
She's out of Chicago. But she wrote a tweet that I like screenshotted and kept with me for this week. And it says, pessimism is a tool of white supremacy. They don't want you to be imaginative about a world free from genocide, wealth hoarding, patriarchy, etc. In the moments you think revolution is impossible, it's important to remember that that way of thinking is inherently violent and supremacist. So that's something that I've been meditating on to combat the hopeless feelings
Yes.
of movement that's happening now.
Yes. And see, when people say revolution, well, not people, when you hear the word revolution, so many people think of violence, guns, and killing. What about the revolution of the mind? What about the revolution of the mind? And the people who are out there protesting, and some people are saying, well, the protesting needs to stop. Well, look at that beauty there. Well, how are you, miss? How are you? How are your parents?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. The point is, and President Obama was on briefly the other day with his My Brother's Keeper initiative that he started. Why are people talking about these protesters about? They shouldn't be out there protesting or they won't. This country was found on protests. The American Revolution. Wasn't that protesting? The Civil War, was that about protesting? Absolutely, it was founded on protest. So how are you going to say that, they shouldn't be protesting because look what it's causing, looting and crime. The same thing that is happening now was happening then while they were protesting. Some people were looting and stealing. So why are you so surprised? So I agree with her. Miss No Name, that's the first time I heard this rapper, but she's absolutely right. What about the revolution of your mind?
I don't want to again sound like a bearer of bad news, but I kind of disagree with her. I think in terms of pessimism or optimism, I think it vastly depends on the person, right? Like, I think for some people, having a sense of being pessimistic keeps them grounded. It keeps them focused on the path that they still have to walk. They're not maybe they get so consumed with like optimism that they forget to do the work. You know, there's some people without that optimism would never do the work.
You have some strong points, but I don't call it being pessimist. I call it balance. Why do I say that? Because even though you're optimist, well, you can't be a fool and just be optimist, not willing to do the groundwork, the foot soldiers, right? The groundwork, the hard work, the scud work. That's what I'm talking about. And those young people out there who are pounding the paper, that's the scud work. You know, the leaders will emerge, but there would not be the leaders without the scud work. So I call it balance. Why? Because in that goal that you're working towards, you're going to look at, now what could go wrong? What if it doesn't work this way? What pushback should we expect? So I don't call that being pessimistic. I call it balance and forward thinking, because you're trying to anticipate. Will you know all of it? No, but it gives you a more well-rounded view, I think, in order to pursue what it is that you're trying to accomplish.
I see.
Go ahead, Najee.
Hey.
Hey,
okay.
finish eating?
Yeah, I did.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the one thing that will always make me have Megger in my heart, or just something that I'll always love about my experience at Megger, was never having to experience kind of like being the minority, in a sense that like I never felt misunderstood. I was amongst a community of people that shared similar cultural backgrounds, similar like socioeconomic status, things of that nature.
Yeah.
And once I left Megger, I found myself in predominantly white spaces, and it took me a while to kind of figure out how to present my Blackness in a way that it wasn't hostile, but that it made its point. So just with everything going on, I've kind of found myself in like a troubling spot, especially like with my job. I was very disappointed in the fact that we didn't really talk about what was going on, you know, amongst ourselves as employees. I thought that should have been the first thing that we should have done, especially if I work at a research institute dedicated towards mental health. Checking up on the mental health of your minority, you know, employees, especially your Black employees, since there's so little of us. And I found myself kind of just like looking at my coworkers who I have on social media who are white, and kind of just being like, so you guys aren't gonna say nothing? Like just waiting for them to say something, and kind of getting upset when I didn't see them post anything on social media, or like trying to engage conversations about everything that's been going on. So I guess my question to you is, being a Black person in a predominantly white space, how do you kind of maneuver just having these relationships, but also like advocating for what's going on in your community in a way that it's not so hostile to your coworkers or the area that you're in?
That's an excellent question, because we have to live and survive in this world. The first thing is to be, well, when I say open, that when you're presenting your point, that is, excuse me, I just got a catch in my throat. When you're talking with them, it's always, are you sane? I hear what you say and I respect your opinion. But have you ever thought about, be very open, non-threatening, so that people don't take you as a threat, that they don't feel that anger coming up in them. And you say, but have you thought about, suppose you had such and such, what would you do? Well, some of them are going to tell you, oh, that doesn't happen. And you can very be assertive, very calmly say, oh, yes, it does happen, such and such. And if you experience that, do you think you would be feeling differently about what you said? You see, when I have found, and I still don't know all the answers, I have found that when people, white people, because they are, remember, there's white privilege. They've all, just for the fact that they're white, I don't care if they poor, they're white, right? And even Jewish people with the Holocaust and all, but their skin is white. White privilege. So they believe in what they believe, but because of the white privilege, it's like, okay, this happened now, but that's, all right, it happened, but that's not the way it really is. And when you say that they didn't post, well, don't expect them to post. If they post, okay. But you are going to be the type of person to not only say, but live. Live and carry yourself without arrogance, but carry yourself as a strong Black woman. And proud, not prideful, and don't present yourself as a threat when you're speaking to them, because your Blackness is already a threat. And if you're a woman, you know where I'm coming from. And if you are a woman, because, well, I'll leave that right there. So,
no,
you're right. You're right. You're right. You know why? That was one, mental health, that should have been one of the first things they were talking about. Go ahead, Larice.
No, I just wanted you to pick up to continue the conversation about Black women. I think this also ties into Jaleesa's question that's also in the chat, and also conversation about intersectional identities, and this will go on and on and on, because we could talk about Black women, we could talk about the Black LGBTQ, we could talk about Blackness in so many different forms and ways. But to tag on to Jaleesa's question was like, do you have any thoughts about why the outrage appears to be different for George Floyd in comparison to Breonna Taylor, to Sandra Bland, and to all the other women who unfortunately passed or are seen as secondhand, and how these intersectional identities are working towards this movement?
Well, you know, George, it's not about George Floyd. It's about George Floyd, but George Floyd represents all the others. This is what's so maddening about this. Trayvon Martin, Teresa White, Sandra Bland in Texas, where she was stopped for a traffic violation, a light, and the sheriff went up to her and she's smoking. He said, put out your cigarette. She said, sir, I'm in my own car. He said, get out of the car, I'll light you up. Can you imagine that? She's in her own car and she should put out her cigarette. My point is that why is it, you say, why the outrage now? Larice, we saw the video of Aubrey, the young man in Georgia. We saw a video of the young man in Charleston some years ago. But Larice, this, who is that? Well, look at that. My goodness, go back to sleep.
Let's go, Jim Jam.
Larice, here is an 8.5 minute video. Do you know how long that is?
I would also push back on that as well, because there's also videos of Black women also like dying at the hands of police. If you want to, like, I won't encourage people to look at that video, but if you want to look at Kimberly Crenshaw's talk and the TED Talk, and towards the end of it, it's her section, multiple videos of it.
I know.
And it's hard to, I'm sorry.
It's hard. We know it's hard. But Larice, this time it's different. It's not just George, it's the string. And it's not only Black men, it's Black women. You know, push it under the rug. But this time, you sit and you watch that video and they're playing it over and over and over. I don't know. There's always been outrage. I've always been outraged. You all know that. But what do I do with my rage? And coming back to Najee, being the person I am, and as I said to you, some of you before, I was young once. I had to learn with my outrage. And why isn't someone saying something? Being in a white environment, when I worked for Chase Manhattan Bank, that's what it was called then, not JP Morgan Chase at that time. One of the first Black women to be hired by a bank, and the racism that was around me. I learned then, I was learning before, how to temper myself, but always be who I was supposed to be. The subtle things. You see, I have my hair braided now, right? Because we can't get to the beauty salon. And I don't have a decent wig here. But during the 60s, when the Afro came, oh, and I washed my hair. What did you do to your hair? I said I washed it. Or, why would you call yourself Black? You're not Black. You're dark brown. They think that this is a compliment. So you now must be who you are in order to show them what we are. They want Black culture. They want the style. They go to tanning, but they don't want to live the life of a Black person, and they do not want to, well, many of them don't understand, but many of them do not want to face it, that because they are white, they are part of the problem of the Blackness in America. Not them personally, but the system that we live on. And we won't even go into women at this point. That's for another day. See, because what they have done to our women in this country is an unforgivable sin, even though we have to forgive it.
You're gonna have to take your phone away, Miss Jemison.
What? Yes, Yonkers, I don't know, everybody could. Yes, go on.
Julissa, did you still have something to say?
Yeah,
Sorry.
I do.
Go ahead.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Hi, Ms. Jemison.
Hello, Julissa.
My question is about the upcoming presidential election. I feel like we're in this state again about like choosing the lesser of the two evils in terms of the candidates. I feel like to some degree, you know, when Biden was vice president, because Obama chose him, like, you know, we saw him in a positive light. And, you know, now that some of us may be aware about the 1994 crime bill, you know, now we're looking at Biden in a different light. And, there's been conversation about, Black people altogether withdrawing their vote until, candidates or the Democratic candidates showing that, you're going to have some Black agenda that's going to benefit us. And then there's some of us who think, well, if that doesn't happen, then 45 is going to be in office again. So it's like, what do we do? And is it enough to have Biden, vote for Biden and then, vote in your local elections, and then that's supposed to counteract it?
Okay, Jalissa, you said some very important things there. You're all voters now, aren't you? And this is why you yourselves can get together and you make Biden accountable, just like he said, I will nominate a woman on the ticket, right? And I went to the town hall meeting where Black leaders said, you promised to nominate a woman on the ticket. We want to be very sure that you're looking at somebody of color to have diversity and to say what it is that you said you're going to do for us. And they're meeting now and saying, you have to tell us what it is you expect to do, because this is our agenda. This is what we want. Enough of the promises. Now, he is the most viable choice out of the ones who were running. And if you don't vote, what's going to happen? We're going through another 4 years of this, I don't know what you call it. Because it certainly is not leadership. It is not even bad leadership. It is zero leadership. It is up to us as people of color to make Biden accountable. We're in a position now to say, if you want our vote, and this is clergy, Black leaders, and people who are in alliance, we want to see such, such, and such. Other people do it. The Jewish people do it because they vote in blocks, right? And all the young people who still misinformed, oh, my vote doesn't mean anything. Our young Black people, and don't think that that's not out there, because I hear it. It's up to you. See, because you have it. You're a mega baby. You know. And if you don't vote, you still vote. If you don't vote, you still vote. And in the midst of all this, former President Obama summed it up in one word: vote. Vote, vote. And because you're going to vote, we're in a position now, we as people of color, is to make Biden accountable. I'm so glad you guys are thinking. Yes, get into politics. Get into politics. And remember what I always said. You look at where the money goes and look at land projects, how land is used. We talk about zoning, housing zoning, the justice system, land use, right? Ways and means, the tax dollar. It's not only about the president. We need to vote up and down the line. The governors, the senators, the mayors. Well, look at New York City. We have a Black woman who's the Attorney General. Who's the Attorney General? Who, Cuomo is there, and when he leaves, I think Tish James should be governor. Claire, The mayor's election is coming up. A lot of people want to run. I look at Eric Adams. Yes. So it's not only about the president. Because if the president up there doing all these crazy things, like he's getting pushback from governors now, says, no, we're not going to do that. The governors rule the states. The mayor rules the city. So we need to not only look at the president up and down the line on the ballot. So remember now, and I'm counting on you, no vote is a vote.
Fatimata wanted to say something.
Who is she? Where is she? Hello? Is she on camera?
I never had your class.
Hi, where are you?
I do not have my video on.
Oh, you've never, is this Fatima Bar?
No, I'm Barry.
No. Okay, go ahead.
So one of the things that's been on my mind is how is this idea of black on black crime and how it only happens, black on black crime.
Black on black crime, yes.
And how it only seems to be brought up whenever there is a case of police brutality in the spotlight. And and I feel like in a way it is kind of undermining these incidents and how it's like trying to divert away from the problem in a sense.
Oh, sure.
And this morning I was going through my Facebook feed and I saw a video of Candace Owens, who is a Black conservative commentator. And she was talking about how Black people seem to murder criminals in our community because, like, George Floyd had some criminal background and how they made him out to be this superhero. And I just wanted to know, what are your thoughts on that?
They're not making him out to be a superhero. He's probably had some things in the past. Could be felonies. But they bring these things up to change the narrative. They're bringing these things up because if he committed a crime, okay, he committed a crime. Why wasn't dealt with as whatever crime it was? Why did he lose his life? Let's think, if it had been a white person, do you think that would have happened? Whatever crime it was. And now, look at Eric Gardner. He was selling cigarettes without a license, loose cigarettes. Should he have lost his life over that? Black on black crime they're using now because they want to divert the attention. It's called hijacking the movement. They want to divert their attention away from the true reasons of why this is happening. Is that clear? It is pulling the scab off that sore. So now we have to put some powder on it and cover it up and look over here to get the attention away, to change the narrative. And yes, there's black on black crime. But as Reverend Sharpton said yesterday, if you would take your foot off our neck, when we make a mistake and come back and want to go right, if you keep your foot off our neck, we wouldn't go in the street and sell drugs. We wouldn't snatch our grandmother's pocketbook. Yes, we're giving you a second chance and come out and there's nothing, and then we squeeze you to death.
Ms. Jemison,
should we be educated enough to not? Hey there, how are you?
Hi.
How's your family? So
Everyone's good.
Fatima, Miss Fatima,
Yes, I just wanted to hear your thoughts on it because it really bothers me how it is always brought up whenever, you know, we're talking about police brutality. And
Yeah.
even though, like, the reality is that every race kill more of their own
It is
than
to change
outside.
the narrative. It is to change the narrative and get the spotlight off of what the true problem is.
And I think,
there's a problem, black on black crime, but it is to take your attention away from the true problem.
If I
Yes,
may,
Lena
I wanted to ask, like, so of course, like, George Floyd isn't what sparked the movement. He's more of like the tipping point. But even with that said, why didn't we get this sort of reaction when Breonna Taylor died? Why didn't we get this type of reaction when Sandra Bland died? Why didn't we get this type of reaction for every single one of our Black sisters who died at the hands of police? Like, why is it that it took another man? Why is it that we don't give the same coverage when it's a woman that dies? When Botham Jean died, like, that was something that was on the news for a very long time before, and everybody recognized it. But when it's a Black sister that dies at the hands of police, we don't give it that same recognition. And I realize that there are a lot of intra-group differences. So I just kind of want to hear your take on that.
Well, you're absolutely right. But what did I say? Yeah, well, Brianna, today would have been her birthday, 27 years old. And that could be my daughter, could be my grandchild. You saying, why is it not getting the attention? Well, with Mr. Floyd, do you see what happened? It was just, as the saying goes, the straw that broke the camel's back. Can a straw break the camel's back? It's a long line of things. It's a long line of things, Lena Marie.
I'm saying beyond just, these protests erupting in the streets and they're rioting and everything that comes with it. I'm saying the amount of coverage that we give our Black sisters who die is not the same coverage that we give our Black brothers.
Well, that's where you come in.
Yeah, I was gonna.
As the movement is going, you're part of the solution. And this is what you are saying to the movement and to the leaders. We are all human, and we demand the same justice, not only for our Black brothers, but for our Black sisters also. That's where you come in.
I think
I
as much as
agree.
we try to demand the same justice, it's not fully true. But I'm gonna keep my comments shut.
But I think that's a societal problem, not
yeah,
necessarily a movement problem.
That's right.
Exactly. I was gonna say,
But wait, I'm sorry. Go on.
I was going to say in response to Lena, it's not only just the news media who has a big, control and handle over why we react the way we do, because they do tend to, post videos of when we lose our brothers. But I also think it's an eternal problem within our community as well. I feel like Black women often think that they have to be at the forefront a lot, and they have to protect, and they have to kind of nurture certain situations, because even now with all of the rioting and the protesting and the looting, even now, even though that George Floyd was the straw that broke the camel's back, you still see that there are more Black women on the forefront fighting and posting on his behalf, as well as Breonna Taylor's behalf, in comparison to our Black brothers. So I think it's just something that has happened over time, and it's acquired from generation to generation. And because of that, this is why I thought that this was a great idea to have these conversations, because we don't, in all actuality, we don't have these conversations in our households 9 times out of 10. And when we do, it's often censored. And if we already have media that is censoring these conversations, why are we censoring it within our homes? And that's why I say, even when we speak on social media and people say, you know, Black mothers tend to raise their sons differently from their daughters. Why do we do that? Is there really a necessity to do that? So I think it starts from you and you internalizing and figuring out, why do we do these things? And moving forward, how can I change that in what I do? How can I
But
change
even
that?
still, I'm sorry, but even still with our Black sisters on the forefront, why is it that we're not giving that same amount of attention to each other? You feel me? Like,
No,
But
that's
we don't
true. That's
demand
very
it.
true. Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. That is true,
I
but we
think it's
don't
like an
demand it.
attitude.
Mm-hmm. Because even if,
Like even with the debates on Facebook when we're speaking to one another, we don't like, even like when we speak to each other, there's not a lot of, okay, I understand where you're coming from.
Yeah.
This is my perspective. There's, oh no, you're stupid. Stop talking.
Yeah.
This is not the point. That this is not what the your opinion is stupid, and we all have to remember that an opinion is not a fact. That's just how
Exactly.
that person feels. We don't like just like whoever Shay just said, not enough love is not enough love, because it's like we're competing with one another, like who's smarter, who's doing, like, you know what I mean?
It's very combative
with each other and listening, like understanding, then we will learn more, because we just have to be more compassionate and more empathetic with each other instead of just like shutting everything down. Like, no, she doesn't know what she's talking about. Let me overpower what she's saying.
I definitely agree. I feel like Black women do often speak on a very combative note. And that's why I always hold this near and dear to my heart. Sometimes we have to know how to listen to people when they are speaking, not to respond, but to understand. Because when you're always on edge and you're always, you know, trying to prove that you're correct, no point on either side will ever get across to the other person. No, there would never be a resolve if you're constantly combative, constantly feeling as though because you hold a certain status or you hold a certain position, or because you may feel in your own, you know, feeling that your opinion and what you're feeling is more important, we will never get a solution.
Yeah.
So that's why I say you have to start within.
And
the
may I say something? I'm so glad that you young sisters are saying that, because with Black women, we need to get rid of the competition.
Yeah.
That's it. You can do that. You do that. I'll do this over here. How do we connect to get this going? We need to get rid of the conversation and keep the eyes on the prize. Get rid of the conversation. The modern civil rights movement, the footwork, the groundwork, behind the men were out front. Who do you think was doing that work? But as long as our brothers are out there, is that benefiting us? Yes. But I'm so glad you brought that up, because do not think it'll stop. My generation, we have to learn how to get rid of the competition, be collaborative, and keep our eyes on the prize. We all will come out winners.
Yeah, I think people's biggest problem is they don't understand that there's no, like, I feel like say if you wronged me, right, Ms. Jemison, and now my duty, how I am now, my duty is to understand why you did that and where was your headspace. Understand? A lot of people don't look at it that way. They just look at it as, my side is right, you did me wrong, that's it. But there's two sides to the story. You should still try to understand why this person is this way, or where were they coming from, what was their headspace. I could have been having a bad day and then I just lashed out on someone, you know.
True.
But it's good to try to understand it and where people are coming from in their headspace in the moment. Like back to what she was saying before, I forgot her name, but what she was saying before in regards to the Black on Black crime, I feel like police officers play a role in that as well. Because, like, for instance, when our Black brothers, they get arrested, and someone, their best friend probably was the one who told the cops the information, right? The cops then give that guy the information, and then they put them back into the street. So now they're at war with one another. They were friends before. Now they're at war with one another. So I think that the cops, a lot of cops and attorneys and things like that, they play devil's advocate, and there's also another reason why these people, like even with the robbing and stealing, they get arrested for little things and they go to jail, and then they come home and they can't do anything. So now they're robbing and stealing because they can't get a job because of their record.
That's true.
So I think like government
That's
and things
true.
play a part in everything. And it's not just black people, black on black crime. It's also the putting them out there and just letting everyone go at war and come to bat with each other. Like they'll post something on social media from 5 years ago. Like now, they posted something from a few years ago about Obama that probably a lot of people did not know. And
I don't know.
Obama signed something protecting cops, and a lot of people took it in a way like, oh, he's the reason the cops are doing what they're doing to us.
No, right.
Instead of doing their research, you know what I mean?
Right.
But now they're throwing it out there. They keep throwing us stuff about Obama, keep throwing us stuff about Obama that we probably, a lot of people didn't know before. So now we're looking at him like, okay, Obama's a bad person.
No, he's not. And see, you guys on Facebook, I've never been on Facebook. People have put me on Facebook, my pictures and everything, my church activities and all that. I've never been on Facebook.
It's nothing you need to be on, Ms. Jemison. It's
yeah, and so many people say Facebook, and now that the churches are closed, the service is on Facebook, but I do it from my phone. I just listen because I don't want to put myself on Facebook. And I just think that the media, social media is great, but so much of it is wrong. But social media is playing a very positive part now, and it's also playing a negative part. I see that there are 30, how many people were here? My goodness. How many people were here? Now, how many people was on this chat today?
About 50. 50. No, it was about 50.
50, that's what 50 people, I'm saying. I'm so proud of you guys. I am so proud of, and I mean, when Ariana contacted me, I said, well, who's this and why would they want to talk to me? I'm so proud of you guys. We're all proud of you. We're all proud of you. You do what you can do when you can do it. But we are also, and you don't know, I'm busting with pride. I'm like I'm just a proud grandma.
I think you guys raised us.
What?
So you guys raised us to be how everyone is today.
That's right. And we're so proud. So now some of you have graduated already, huh?
Yeah.
And then some of you are in your third term? Third year, I'm saying third term. Third year. Hi, Nadia. Oh my goodness. And I see Isaac was on, but I never saw his face. Isaac Guerrero, I haven't seen him since he left. Wow. I'm just so proud of all you guys, and you keep in touch, and you let me know the next time, if there's a next time that you would like to do this.
I was gonna say I might do this every other week, maybe we can, because I know there's a lot of topics and it's gonna take a lot of time to kind of section it all out and really get to the nitty gritty. So I don't mind organizing it again for another topic.
All right, I appreciate it. And when I share this with my colleagues, now I don't want you to be talking around the kids that are there now. But congratulations to all who have graduated. Congratulations to the ones who are graduating now. And congratulations to all of you for the work that you're doing. 50 people. Wait till I share this. Is Veronica still here? Is Veronica Ford still here? I know Miss Stewart said, could she come? And she was here. Maybe she's gone, but 50 people. Wow. Veronica, can you believe this? About 50 people. Oh dear. Miss Stewart is here. Can you want to say hello to Miss Stewart?
Hey, Miss Stewart.
Good afternoon.
Wow.
How are you?
Hi, Miss Stewart.
Hi, Miss Stewart. You know, I think it's an excellent thing y'all are doing.
Oh, look alike. Your whole face.
I just took it off and dumped it on her. Yeah. Terrific. Anyhow, guys, it's good to see you guys. I was on a phone call, and I'm really happy that you're speaking with Miss Jemison. I think that was like the best thing for you to do, and nobody knows U.S. history like Miss Jemison does. So, you know, you guys keep up the good work and get out there. If you're protesting, protest, but keep in mind the fact that everybody wasn't necessarily made to protest. There are some people who they're going to sit at home and they're going to write letters, and there are others who are going to start a podcast, and there are others who are going to team up with people from other countries, but everybody wasn't made to do the same thing. Okay, I just want you to keep in mind. So those of you who are not out there protesting actively, don't feel like you're not doing anything, because there are other things that you can do that's within your wheelhouse to do. Okay?
That's right. And we love you all, and we'll be in touch. We've just spent 2 hours together. How about that? Well, look at this one now. How are you?
Who's that?
Hello.
I'm Miss Jemison.
How are you? Well, look, Alicia, some things never change.
Miss Jemison, before you go, I just wanted to ask a little quick question. I know there's just been a lot going on, and honestly, I feel myself personally, I've been deprived of understanding my Black history, and I've been spending some time just trying to learn new things and educate myself. I wanted to know if there's any books that you might recommend or anything that you'd like us to listen to that you think would be helpful.
I just told them they should go to YouTube and Google Jane Elliott.
Oh, I know
also,
her.
what's her last name is Alexander. There's a book, The New Jim Crow.
Oh, Michelle Alexander.
And then what's his name starts with a, well, I'll look it up. I have the book upstairs about the American Revolution. And also, I read 2 and 3 books at one time. I'll put together a list for you. There's also one I'm reading, when we used to say the pledge, when I started school, there was not under God. That came about in the 1950s under President Eisenhower. That's another book you should read, and how they have used religion to maintain white supremacy. And you guys, like you're telling me about, you need to be giving me some things about what you're doing also.
There is
and there's quite.
What was that?
I'm sorry, Mrs. Jemison, I didn't mean to cut you off. I apologize.
Right. Give them the name of that book.
Okay, it was left on the site where George Floyd died. Somebody brought the book and just placed it where his head was resting. And that book is Ralph Ellison. It's called The Invisible Man.
Yes. Yes.
Some of you might have read it in college or what have you, but it really speaks to what is taking place today. And although that book was written in like the 50s or the 60s, it's still so relevant today. So that's a good one for you to
by
take
Ralph Ellison. Yes, that's another one.
If I'm not mistaken, I think Mrs. Set made us read that book in high school.
That's possible.
Yes.
Very possible.
Yeah, I think she did. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so before we end the call, I just want to say, like I told you guys, please send me your businesses if you're working on it, if you're about to start it, if you started it already, and any other information like books, so that I can just compile a huge list and just send it out to all of you guys who took part. And like I said, we can work on doing this on a weekly basis or every other week, whatever works. But I definitely want to keep this going, because eventually the protesting, the rioting, the upset and the anger and the social media posts will die down. But I want this to continue to be an ongoing conversation and something that we really, work towards finding a resolution for.
Oh, I'm so proud of you guys. Thank you.
I'll also add that after all of this, the recording will come to me in a link of some form about like an hour or so later, depending on how long it takes to make a video. So I'll also send that to Ariana to send that out as well.
Mm-hmm.
Oh wait, can I say something before?
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, I just want to like you guys know that I put a link to like the book list that I've been compiling. It has like 50 books or so, roughly. So feel free to like use that as well. I found it pretty helpful, and I add books like every 2 days or so. So yeah.
Ah, this is good.
Perfect. I just want to say thank you to all of you guys again, and a really, 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 really big thank you to you, Miss Jimerson, for being down with this and sharing your gems that you've shared with us from when we didn't even know they were gems. So thank you again.
Thank you all so much, and remember, we love you and we're proud of
We love
all of us.
Love you
Bye
too,
now.
Ms. Jemison. Thank
Bye.
you.